Good day. Welcome back to another episode of the Truck Focus Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Hannaberry. In today's episode, I'm excited as one of my mentors and someone I just have a whole world of respect for, Erik Sherman, acts as a guest host on the podcast. So today, Erik interviews two highly respected professionals, Don Sharp, CEO and President, and Marc Amarillas, Vice President of Customer Success at Coolfire. So for those of you involved in the transportation industry, you've probably noticed the rapid speed at which our industry is advancing. We've been able to advance at such speeds thanks to the introduction of innovative technologies and software that can actually be integrated into your businesses. Now, I'm sure at some point over the last couple of years, you've experienced some type of frustration with this up and coming technology because it overcomplicated the process instead of creating a seamless workflow. Well, that's honestly why I'm so excited for today's episode, as it highlights Coolfire Core, a collaboration software with built-in workflow automation tools, which ties data and teams together to create efficiencies around your work. By giving your team the right data at the right time, your teams can focus on what matters most, your customers. So I encourage you to learn more about Coolfire by visiting their website. So it's www.coolfiresolutions.com. Well, let's get to it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me on the call. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Today we got Don Sharp and Marc Amarillas. Don is the CEO of Coolfire Solutions and Marc is the Vice President of Customer Experience, right? Or Customer Success, sorry.
Customer success, correct.
Excellent.
Same thing,
I love that title.
Experience, success, they all go hand in hand, really.
Hopefully, yeah, if you're doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm trying to do over here.
So Coolfire Solutions is a, how would you guys describe Coolfire Solutions? It's a communication platform that does.
I think the way we talk about it is collaboration to better manage your business operation. So you'll hear like Gartner will talk about it as work stream collaboration. It's still, frankly, it's a pretty emerging space. There's some well-known players in it, like the Slacks of the world. But where we're different is we're the next generation, which is we're not about just chatting and communicating back and forth. We're about really helping companies better manage their operations, get control of the chaos that lives out in their world every single day.
Yeah, well, there's an awful lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
We talk primarily to a trucking audience, and if you ask any driver, they'll tell you that there's chaos at just about every turn that isn't controlled. So having anything in the system that allows for that control and makes that streamlined process happen is beneficial. So I'm excited to talk about that. But before we get into it, I'd really like to learn more about you guys, more about Coolfire as a company, how long it's been around, and what your real value proposition is. So why don't we start with learning a little bit about you guys. Don, you came from Navistar, 5.5 years roughly at Navistar. So you got some trucking bona fides.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It was, my whole career has been in technology, and I was very fortunate. A lot of it was spent kind of advising and implementing technology for companies over my career. And then I got this great opportunity to go to work at Navistar and become CIO. And so I was really eating my own dog food, if you will, which for me, I'd always wanted to do because, coming in, recommending things, implementing things, and then leaving, right, in a tech, if you're selling and delivering technology, drastically different than being the guy in the chair who has to drive it through the organization, deal with all the change management issues, figure out, how to sell it, how to pay for it, how to communicate it, all those kinds of things. So it was a tremendous experience for me to extend my skill sets, I guess, eat my own dog food in a lot of ways. And of course, being a part of the trucking industry, I love the trucking industry. It's always been fascinating to me. I love vehicles and trucks and the manufacturing process and all that. And it was a really great company to work for. It was a wonderful experience there.
That's fantastic. What did you learn about the trucking industry while you were there that kind of started to shape some of what you understand about the industry?
Complexity,
Yeah.
A lot of complexity. It's a challenging business, bottom line, right? As a manufacturer, it's a highly cyclical industry. which makes it extremely difficult to manage the business. I mean, I've seen a lot of businesses in my career, and I'll tell you, it's one of the harder industry, probably the hardest industry I've ever seen, just because of that inherent cyclicality driven by environmental regulations. But then you just look at the complexity of the business and manufacturing and supply chains and trying to move your products, completed trucks. I mean, there is a lot of moving parts of that business, and it is extremely complicated. And so I got a great appreciation for that complexity and what it takes to really bring a high quality truck, diesel engine to market. And then how do you keep it going? So it was a wonderful experience. It really was.
That's fantastic. And have both of you been with Coolfire since the beginning?
I have not. So I started with Coolfire a year and a half ago now. And my background, I started as a programmer. I came out of school, went to college for computer science, came out with a programming degree, started there, but just quickly moved over into customer specific customization / more solutions type of oriented programming, and evolved into workflow management, workflow process. Solutioning is the best term, really, working with customers to understand their business and understand how technology can improve their business, which is what really drew me to Coolfire, because the underlying technology and the foundation here is how can we help your business solve these vast challenges using technology and automation and collaboration in the most efficient way possible, right? So, I came over to Coolfire with this excitement that, we have this underlying technology, and now we've been able to apply it to different industries, specifically trucking and logistics. And we're already seeing the benefits that Coolfire is having by applying our philosophy into these scenarios. And I'm excited to see it grow. And we're already starting to see different customers getting value out of the same technology in different use cases, which I think is, for anybody that's interested in passionate about technology, is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I joined late 2013. Company's roots go back to 2010 is when the company was started. And you want to hear a little bit more about that story, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I'd love to.
So back in 2010, it was all the company was founded around this premise of, hey, we've now got these mobile devices, these smartphones that have incredible processing power. We think there's a real opportunity to change the world, particularly in the people who were the original founders in the military space. And so, make a very long story short, 2012, we were awarded a contract with the Science and Technology Group within the U.S. Special Operations Command. So think the R&D group, right? They try out new stuff. And they said, hey, we've got this problem with situational awareness. And of course, our first thing was, what's that, right? And there's a military definition of it, but basically all situational awareness is real-time understanding what's going on around you in the world, right? Where are the people, assets, things, the people I'm going after, and really being able to see that and visualize that in real time. Well, back then, and even to a certain extent today, it's still true, although less so. Their problem was when they dropped a team of Navy SEALs or Green Berets on the ground, they had their radios and they had their weapons, and that was it. Meanwhile, back in the operations center, or the command center, let's call it, the people there overseeing the mission had access to every piece of information they could ever want. But the only way they could get it to them was by talking to them over the radio. And so they said, hey, we want to stream, we want to fix this problem, get more information into the hands of the warfighter. Let's start with streaming video from a surveillance drone to an off-the-shelf Android device. And we need you to do it in less than a second latency, I think they said. Long story short, we did that successfully. It was a lot more challenging than we anticipated because it didn't tell us all the realities, like, oh, by the way, there's not a traditional network. You're gonna have to use military radios as the data network, which was interesting. But we did that. We did it successfully. And so fast forward to a year or so later, I come into the company and I'm fresh out of my time at Navistar. So I have a great sense for the challenges of big companies, big businesses, and really any size businesses. But I looked at the software and I said, my God, every company in America needs situational awareness. I was thinking of my time at Navistar and all the challenges we had and the inability to get information in frontline workers' hands. And when we'd build trucks and then you'd have to, transport them to the dealership of the customer, wherever it was going. Where are they at? How are we doing along the way? Have there been any issues along the way, like rocks breaking windshields, whatever happens on those things? And we didn't have any of that. And I could think about my career experience and, all my CIO peers. It's like, this is something everybody needs. So kind of at that point, we made the decision, hey, we're still doing the military stuff. And we still do today, right? We still have real customers in different parts of the world, working with the U.S. military, U.S. State Department. But we also focused on moving into the commercial space. And that's where we landed our first customer, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Enterprise Holdings. And, kind of the rest is history, if you will. But it did all start from that genesis of working with the military and the concept of situational awareness. And it's funny because, we've literally spent now, over 10 years, well, probably let's call it a little less, maybe 9 years, really thinking about how do you take this concept of situational awareness and apply it in the business world. Let me tell you, it's been interesting over that time that we always believed that this notion of situational awareness carried over and would add tremendous value. But it was, even to this day, there is so much overlap between what a military application needs and what a business needs. It's actually quite surprising, but it continues to hold true today.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. My professional experience tells me that lack of situational awareness at an individual level leads to loss.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
At an organizational level, it leads to loss as well. It's you'll see that in your sales performance. You'll see that in operational inefficiencies.
Yeah.
Where do you see the best fit or the best improvement in situational awareness for your clients?
So I think it depends, specifically as it relates to the transportation industry. I think it's really being what we've seen, at least in our customers, is one, systematizing, let's call it automating what has historically been a very manual process. So think about more complex deliveries. Like one of our customers is delivering vaccines for trials, doing the trials, right? And it's 12-step, Marc would know better, 12-step process. You got to worry about temperature and you got to make sure you get the right specific vial to the right specific place. It's pretty darn complicated. And so, one, the ability to, instead of having that be all manual and paper and a very chaotic process, systematize it, but then also have real-time visibility along the way to know, is this delivery, is this shipment going, is it on schedule? Are there any problems that have occurred? Being able to go back and validate, did they pick up the right vial and did the right vial end up at the right place? So I think a combination of that automating or systematizing, giving them a way to systematize what's been a historically manual process, along with that, really being able to understand real time what's going on in their business. And I guess, Marc, I'd ask you,
Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah, that's a great summary. The only addition I would, tack on, it's not really an addition, it's just really on top of the systematizing of the process comes just this byproduct of response, right? Exception response. So in for this example, right, delivering vaccines, they have to maintain a certain temperature. I think we all have probably read that in the paper, right? They have to maintain this very cool temperature. If they go above that temperature, they're invalid. And that is a critical exception in the world of this company as they are trying to deliver these vaccines, right? You can't deliver a vaccine that has gone above a temperature and give it to a patient. That's a major flag, right? So what happens if a driver, and sometimes these drivers are employees, sometimes they're contract 1099 drivers, right? We deal with both. But what happens if this driver comes across an alarm that is sounding for that vaccine, and they know they have to do something, but they don't know what? Well, historically, they get on the phone. Sometimes they sit on hold for 45 minutes before they get any type of answer of how they proceed. And by that time, it's too late, right? So what our platform has done for this situation is it's given that real-time workflow to the driver of what do they need to do when this situation arises. And then because of our collaboration aspects, they're able to do instant chatting with the right individuals in real time, get real-time response, and not have to sit on the phone for 45 minutes on the side of the road waiting to figure out what they need to do next. So this whole exception response and management is just such a important, vital part of the process, but it all starts with the systematizing and the real-time collaboration and automation. All of that is the foundation. And then, you know, the others are a byproduct of having that already set up.
If you don't mind me, I kind of want you to dig in a little bit more to something. So you and I have chatted in the past on calls, and I've learned an awful lot about certain concepts. And, you know, I want to tell you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really grab onto is this idea that what people are really looking for with most of these systems, especially like Coolfire, is the ability to automate. Mm-hmm. Right? They often think they're looking for a solution that's going to help them save time, but really it's helping them remove the need for that time to start with. Mm-hmm. Right? Which is kind of a different scenario entirely. So what does customer success really look like in your experience? And how does that automation typically show itself when it's working best?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there, right? Because the automation of these projects is absolutely crucial to ensuring overall success of the project. Because even in these situations where we're talking with customers where they're trying to solve a pain and they might not be thinking automation out of the gate, oftentimes as we dig into those projects, there's an incredible amount of manual processing that's happening, from spreadsheet processing to manual uploads. Sometimes, most of the time, there is headcount dedicated to making these uploads happen, right? And resources allocated to just doing manual processing. So in order for us to be able to provide this level of visibility and workflow automation, well, we have to have this automated stream of data coming through into our platform, or at least some way that it's, you know, being automated in the customer's platform that we can tap into. Right, that's kind of step one, because if you're, you know, trying to do real-time response, but there's a manual process in there, it's just a flag that sometimes it's not going to be as effective as we would like, right? So the automation is usually the first step of getting success with these customers. And automation can look like an automated data push and pull from the customer's account. Like I said, it could just be tapping into an already existing process. Whatever whatever ends up happening, there is often a conversation there of how do we make that most effective for both of our companies, and then from there we can, you know, obviously make the rest of our platform work as expected. So, you know, to your question, you know, what does make an entire customer successful in the Coolfire world? Automation, step one. The other big one is change management, right? And not to go off into a tangent or anything, but if we have automation, it makes everybody's world significantly easier. That's the goal, right? Is that it should make everyone's world significantly easier. But the fact of the matter is that anytime you are changing a process, providing a new solution, disrupting the daily life of a driver, of a manager, anybody under these umbrellas, there's going to be some sort of resistance. Even in the most tech savvy individuals, there's always going to be this little change of resistance, right? And so change management is something that we always are dealing with our customers, trying to find ways that we can introduce the power without disrupting the lives significantly. And we found patterns and we found different ways to approach this that have been working for our customers. But it's something that you can't ignore if you are coming to use, not just us, but any new technology, right? That change management aspect is something that is going to happen more than likely, unless in the, you know, very unique circumstance that you're doing greenfield, brand new setup. Like I'm a startup just getting off with this type of platform. But in our experience, there's almost always something that's already set up that we have to learn to manage.
Yeah, maybe just to add one point is, a lot of times I think when people hear automation, especially, coming from the world I came, they think about, eliminating people's jobs and all that stuff. And we're the exact opposite of that, right? Fundamentally, we think about, how can our software make it easy for people to do great work, right? And that's one of the things, like the whole vaccine trial thing was really cool. Is it was a complicated, painful process, manual, paper, cumbersome, and it was challenging for those frontline workers to do great work.
Mhm.
I mean, they did great work, but it was way harder than it should have been. You introduce our software, we automate it. I mean, we take some of those manual steps, paper-based things, we allow them to do it on a smartphone, and suddenly the world's dramatically easier, right? That's what happened at Enterprise, our first customer. And so it's automation to allow people to do great work. That's fundamental, is enabling that frontline worker. It's not about removing them. It's all about making it easy to do great work and enabling them to do higher value stuff, right? That really makes customers, raving fans, if you will.
Yeah.
Marc, I don't want to make any assumptions about your age, but you're probably pretty close to me. And I'm sure that between the three of us, we can imagine, or we can remember the time when apps first started to show up on phones, and everyone was so excited about, oh, wow, we've got this capability and that capability. And everything seemed to be kind of centering around this mobile interaction with the internet and with all of these businesses that we are getting services or products from. It was supposed to make our life easier, but it really just introduced a whole lot of layers of complexity, right? How many passwords do you manage? You manage enough passwords, you need a password manager, right?
Yeah.
How do you really simplify that? Is there a design philosophy? Is there a concept that you're trying to just really steer towards? Like, what's the secret sauce?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's telling that companies like LastPass and those of the like are having so much success because there is such a abundance of apps to accomplish sometimes a single task, right? Sometimes you need 3 or 4 tasks or 3 or 4 apps to be able to execute on daily responsibilities, and it's becoming too much. And that's one of the things we're talking about change management. A lot of the times when we deal with like drivers, for example, they have 3 or 4 apps on their phone to either handle one company or handle multiple different companies if they're a 1099 driver that they're working for, and they don't want to introduce another one. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I get it. I put myself in their shoes, and I wouldn't want to have 6 different apps on my phone to do my daily responsibilities. And so we recognize that at Coolfire, no doubt about it. There are inherent pieces of functionality that you just can't get around having an account. And there's certain things like managing at scale, managing a workforce, security protocols. Like there's just certain things that you'll have to have a Coolfire specific account to solve. And I think everybody recognizes that. But there's also a large handful of things that you don't really need an account for. And let me give an example, right? So UPS, FedEx, let's use FedEx as a better example, has been doing this for forever, really. I mean, since, I won't say forever, for a good amount of time. But when you order something from FedEx or off of Amazon, right, you're provided with a public link. I'll say quote unquote public, just means that you will not need an account to see the information behind that link. So I can see if my package has left the shipping location, if it's en route to my house. Amazon actually has a new feature where you can actually see the driver on the app, and you can see where they're going. And it just gives you that visibility that you want without requiring a lot of friction in between. We see that, and we are applying that to different industries as, taking conceptually that same premise, but still applying it to these different use cases. For example, if I'm a driver, or let me say it this way: if I'm your customer's customer, and there is an exception that comes up, and there's something that I need their input on, or I need them to see so that they can have the most visibility and information to react to that situation, Well, we don't want to require them to have a Coolfire account, for one instance, or maybe just a handful of instances, right? So we have applied this public accessibility concept to our platform, given it off to the customer so that they can interact without requiring any knowledge really of what Coolfire is, but still be able to get the value that we're providing. And that can be applied to many different use cases, but that's how we fundamentally see it. Is if it doesn't require a lot of friction, don't put a lot of friction in the process, right? There's no need for it.
And I think too, building on what Marc said, and frankly, we could probably have a whole hour-long show talking about the nuances of an occasional third-party user versus a dedicated third-party user and all that. But even to our fundamental architecture, what you described was fundamentally part of our value proposition, and that we've worked very hard to build into our software, right? And what is that? Well, historically, software, and I would even argue today, is latest, greatest SaaS software, they create silos, right? From a process perspective, from a database perspective, from a system perspective. And one of the reasons you have all these mobile apps is because every one of these silos says, oh, we got to have a mobile app to get information out of the hands. And so then, you've taken, what are all these silos that have grown up in these companies, and then you add a mobile app on top of it, and you just doubled the number of silos, right? So now you got these workers, and you see it, I think, most critically in these frontline workers. All of a sudden, they want to try to get their job done, because guess what? Especially in transportation, like truck drivers, as an example, people delivering goods every day, right? They're doing things that span these systems and silos and processes. Right, they weren't designed from the frontline workers' perspective. It was, more from a business process, and so they're the ones that get caught with all the challenges of all these mobile apps and everything else. So to make a very long story short, we designed our software, right, to layer on top of all those systems, right. So instead of thinking about process and then system and then enforcing a process. And frankly, it used to drive me nuts, right? When a software vendor would come to me and say, yeah, we got this great new piece of software, but you got to rip out your manufacturing system. I'm like, no, that's not happening. We're not doing that. But instead of that, we layer on top. So you have your existing systems, we can connect into them, bring data into, and make it in effect look like one system, right, to ultimately the end user. But from an architectural perspective, that was a fundamental principle of ours. Don't require them to rip out anything to use our software, and hide those silos in that inherent complexity exists, so that the people at the edge of an organization, the frontline workers, could have a much easier experience, right? Make it easy to do great work. So there's an architectural thing in here for us, and a principle value that we believe in strongly, which is all about simplifying, right? Versus what you described, and which is the complexity.
Yeah. I love how you pointed out that every organization has its own internal complexities too, right? We spend so much time talking about how we interface with the world, and we don't really think as much about how we interface with each other and the different tools we use and processes that are put in place. So one thing that I did really want to dig into with you gentlemen was a conversation around really how do other vendors, so when you're looking at plugging other systems into Coolfire and really supporting multiple applications to reduce all of those different interfaces they need to bounce between, how exactly do you navigate those kinds of conversations when most businesses these days, especially software as a service, is built around the premise of we want to accumulate as much data as possible, and that's part of our competitive advantage. So
maybe let me start, Marc, and then I'd like you to jump in too. I think kind of at a macro level, it's interesting. There's opposing forces at play here, right? Namely, the world is moving to a world in which software companies, in my view, don't have a choice but to be able to interoperate and integrate and work with others, right? The whole rise of APIs and everything else is forcing the market to go there. I mean, that's one of the big drivers behind open source ultimately, right? Which has obviously really matured over the last decade. At the same time, you have another force, and there's multiple of these, but you mentioned it, right? One is this capturing and aggregating and owning data. and there's value, in billions, quite frankly, and doing and having that. And that's a powerful market force. And so I think depending on where companies are at, one's going to win out. I personally think, right, that this integration and sharing and working together is 100% going to win, right? It's a matter of time, right? I've seen too many cases in my career, and I won't use names, but where companies have felt they owned customers' data and controlled customers' data. And the answer is they didn't. And, they ended up losing that argument in battle. And so, anytime organizations try to put their arms around something and hold it tight and keep it to themselves, I just don't believe it's a sustainable business model. But, to your point, it depends, like, on the maturity of the company, how modern their technology is. There's no one answer. You got to go into these things when you talk to them about, well, one, you got to protect yourself, because you don't know if they may want to become a competitor of yours versus, a partner and all that. And you never know what to expect. So you got to start with caution. You got to figure out, is there a model that fits for both organizations and works, and then go from there. And there's so many opposing forces that it's hard to predict, I think, a lot of times. But I do think this movement to sharing and integration is the future, and that will win. If you're going to compete in software, you're going to have to be able to do that. And the companies that don't view it that way are going to hurt themselves.
Yeah. And we're seeing that supported with our customers as well. It's very rare that there is any type of pushback of sharing data or getting that type of access, because they see the vision of how it is going to positively impact the process and the overall solution, right? It's crucial. It's essential. You have, at this point, you have to do it due to, the silo concept that Don was talking about, right? We can't have all these independent systems. It's just not going to make anybody successful. So we find often that, that's not a barrier at all. And to your question, Erik, how do you navigate these conversations and how do you get everybody together? It's a challenge, and depending on the size of the organization, even, the smaller ones have their own challenges. But, we work with carriers, for example, in our region, and, they're integrated with 5 different platforms. You have your OmniTrax location management of the world. You have custom TMS proprietary systems that our legacy have been around for 20, 30 years. And then you have document management systems, you have ERPs, and all these different systems that are managing certain aspects of the process, right? And so the first step there is identifying what the process is, because, from personal experience and, reflecting on my own challenges that I've encountered over the years, if you don't know what the process is up front, it will bite you down the road, because there's going to always be something that you're like, oh, I didn't know that you were integrated with this. That could either help me out, or this is going to introduce just so much more complexity to our overall integration. And so if you can get that diagram of how things are flowing out of the gate, then you at least know where you need to tackle and what's going to be most important to tackle. In the way that we like to do it is starting small. Like Don said, we're not a rip and replace type of company. We do not want to go down that route. We want to build on top of what you already have. And so we identify what is the most important thing that we need to start with. Most of the time it's integrating with the TMS, and it's getting the load information, and this is transportation, obviously, but getting the load, getting that base level information over into Coolfire so we could start there with the foundation. And then we'll build on top of it. Oh, you need to have truck locations. We have an integration with OmniTrax right now out of the box. So if you are an OmniTrax, or we have other vendors that we're integrated with as well, but OmniTrax is a prime example. It's most popular in the industry, right? So if you are integrated with, or if you are a customer of OmniTrax, we'll just pull that in. We have your load data. We'll just pull that in because we already have that integration. So we have an ecosystem ourselves that allows us to move quickly, but we're also able to do these independent integrations with TMSs and in proprietary systems that gets that base level data. So, back to your question, how do you navigate those type of conversations? Start small, start with the most important pieces and expand over time. Because if you don't, you try to tackle everything at once, it's going to be a headache. You're not going to get all the right people in the room. That's for sure. Big challenge there. And then the, change management aspect of it is also something we can't forget, because there's a lot of moving parts.
Well, I think too, maybe just a point to add on to what Marc said around the change management front is, what we're doing is new. It's different, right? Unless you were a military person, right? If you find an ex-military person, which actually you do in the transportation industry, right? Just because the military is so effective at logistics and all that stuff. If you come across one, you say situational awareness, they're like, oh, I get it, right? But otherwise, most people don't understand that. And that's why you don't see us talk about it a ton necessarily. But we're doing something new. We're doing something very different. We call workstream collaboration. And, so the mainstream guys, Slack, Microsoft Teams, and then they have this what they call, and those are commoditized, right? Chat is commoditized, right? There's nothing unique or innovative, I would argue, about that. But where Gartner sees, and frankly we see as well, this workstream collaboration going is to these new work cases, right? With industry specific collaboration and collaboration for frontline workers, process-based and role-based and blah, blah, blah. And that's where we're operating today. So we're doing something new and different. And to Marc's point, a lot of times people from a change management perspective have a hard time visualizing what that means and how it can impact their business. There's visionaries that get it and they do it, and they get it right away and they can see it, but not everybody can, right? A lot of people, they're trying their best to get their job done every day, and they're putting out fires and trying to get loads delivered and everything else. And sometimes they don't have time, whatever. So you start small, you get it in people's hands, you get them to see the power of what it can do, and then ideas will explode, right? That's what happened at Enterprise, right? We had some visionaries who got it. And then once people started seeing it in action, they're like, oh my God, we could take your software and apply it here, 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 and here. Like roadside assistance is a great example. So that notion of starting small from a change management perspective, helping people understand the power is really important for what we do. And frankly, I'd argue for any kind of new or innovative software.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fantastic. Actually, that's a good lead into a question that I had for you, specifically relating to kind of creating visibility and transparency into the workflow for third parties or customers, right? So trucking companies, if you go back to I want to say, what was it? It was 2016 when, I think it was 2016 or 2017 when ELDs became mandatory in the United States under FMCSA. In Canada, they just became mandatory at a federal level. So there's a lot of carriers out there right now that are going through the shopping process still. And one of the big obstacles that they are facing is there's got to be like 50 different manufacturers and suppliers into this particular segment, right? In this particular product. They don't really know who's good or who's not yet. The big carriers, the big guys, they have 2,000-3,000 units on the road. That's a different story. They've had their thumb on this one for a while, but the reality is 70 to 80% of carriers are not those big carriers, right? They're the small to medium sized carriers that are just going through this learning curve. A lot of those ELD providers, they try to be a Swiss Army knife, and anyone who knows anything about Swiss Army knives knows that they're a really crappy pair of scissors.
Yeah.
So how do you get this message, or how do you want to communicate this message to carriers about, don't look for the thing that tries to be everything. Look for the thing that you need, and then look for the solution to help you pull in the other things, so you're not compromising everywhere you turn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, and Marc, you can chime in too. It's a great question, and it's a complicated question, I think, is the short answer. I think the ELDs are the exact situation of what I talked about before, and it's that there is a fundamental flaw in the software business, and it's not unique to transportation and trucking. But something comes up, we have a problem, we have an issue, there's an unmet need in the marketplace. We do a solution that does this for ELDs. And then, you said Swiss, so then they start trying to tack on other stuff. And in the process of tacking on other stuff, you introduce a lot more complexity. I would argue there's a reason why some major ERP systems have crappy user experiences, right? It's not because they're not smart. It's not because they don't know how to develop software, but you tack on stuff over time, and it gets complex and it gets hard to create a great user experience. But you're also, again, you're creating silos. You're thinking, right, what's the process? How do I automate the process? You're forcing people to use a process. In some cases, you're locking them into a given piece of software. And I think that's my experience has been, that's a fundamentally flawed way. I mean, it's the way the world is, so you have to deal with it. But it locks you in. It creates a lack of flexibility. Anytime you try to do something that spans functions or processes, it creates all kinds of problems and inability to do that. And so I think the way you described, we're kind of coming at it from the other side, which is saying, listen, you already got all these systems, you got this problem, right? The answer is not rip out your software, right? That is a horrible answer. I mean, that's where you see companies spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these big ERP systems. And great if you can afford it and want to do it, but we think that's a bad answer. So we want to flip it and think about it more from the end user side, I would argue, but also the company. And instead of locking it into process and forcing this rigid structure of silos, give them the flexibility to create their own process, however they want to do it, bring in the data they need, do the thing they need to do, and send it back out. Because that historical way of building software, and I say that, I mean, even some of the new SaaS stuff that you see is hot in the trucking market. I would argue it's got the exact same problem, right? In some cases, it requires you to rip out your old stuff and put in new stuff. But regardless, it forces a process, right? Anytime, I mean, it drove me crazy at Navistar. I mean, if I had a nickel for every time a software vendor told me you have to change your process to match the process in the system, I'm like, well, okay, if that's accounts payable, I'm good, right? But if it's something I'm in the marketplace where I'm trying to differentiate ourselves versus the competition, that's no good, right? And I just think that's a flawed premise. And so we're kind of trying to come at it from a different angle around leveraging what you have, given flexibility to embed your process. Think about it more from an end user perspective and how you enable that. And when you do that, you give visibility to the organization. But we're really trying to stay away from that legacy software design construct because we think it's flawed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, the first question I have to customers is, what is your ideal experience, right? What do you need to have to perform optimally in your daily responsibilities, right? What is that view? What is the data? Where is this all coming from? Like, what do you want to see that will impact you daily, right? Because if you have the answer to that question, then you can, as Don said, right, you can start backing up and finding, oh, well, this data is here and this data is here. And then Coolfire, we, with our vast integration capabilities, we can pull stuff together. We pull stuff from different systems out of these silos, right? And give you the visibility you're looking for without having to build anything new. And so not really anything except for in addition to what Don said there, but it is such a fundamental piece of our philosophy that we're excited about and has been resonating with our customers thus far.
And maybe just Mark, maybe think of something else, but we think there are so many problems that we see, like in transportation and logistics, that by layering our software on, you can create tremendous value and not spending a whole lot of money on it, to be completely frank, versus, 10 years ago, when I would have had to look at this, I would have said, oh my gosh, we got to rip out this system, put in a new ERP or do whatever. And the costs and complexity and risk were through the roof. And so we really believe, right? You apply this notion of situational awareness, you leverage what you have, we can make a huge impact without, completely disrupting the business. And Mark's statement, there's always change management is right, but our change management versus ripping out systems and putting in a new ERP there's no comparison. We think we can create huge value and for a much lower cost and in a much less disruptive manner.
That's fantastic. So I have one more question for you, and then I know Don, you're a busy guy, and Mark, and so I want to be sure to respect your time. But the last question I have for the both of you really is rooted in the work that I do with small businesses, startups that are introducing new applications or introducing new systems that carriers can implement or companies can implement within their business. A huge barrier to entry for most of these small startups is getting past that initial hurdle of, oh my God, one more app, right? How do I add one more layer of complexity to my business? There's a lot of value to being able to say, hey, you know what? Don't worry about that. There's another company here that we can work with, and this company can help us do that smoothly and in a way that leaves you better optimized for your operations. When you're looking at integrations, when you're looking at out-of-the-box integrations with other software packages, is there anything that that you want to say to that? Is there anything you want to add to that line of thought?
Yeah, I guess high level, right? We believe that is a fundamental element of our value proposition. And as I said before, I'd argue if any software company isn't thinking about how they make it easy for their software to integrate with other software, they're missing the boat, I think, in my mind. In our case, I'd take it a step further, though. That's kind of table stakes. We're looking at it as a key element of our value proposition. So we're making a lot of investments in how do we make that as easy as possible to do these integrations. And that includes all the way to enabling our customers to do it, right? Because at the end of the day, that's where we want to go. Not every customer wants to do that, but the ones that do, we want to give them that capability. And integration is the bane of every IT professional's existence. It is excruciating. It's painful. It's costly. It's like nobody wants to do it, right? It's just painful. And so we believe that what we're doing and some of the things we'll be rolling out later this year, early next year, it's not an afterthought. It's not table stakes. We believe it as a differentiable capability, and that is crucial to our value proposition. So it's something we're investing in very significantly. And like I said, we think it's a huge pain point. If we can help eliminate some of that pain, and we've got some great examples already today with our early capabilities of, we can integrate data in a couple of weeks. It's like, huh? It's pretty easy to do that. It's usually, some of the companies we've had to work with, larger companies, it takes 6 months to do their side. So for us, it's a key part of our value proposition, we believe, over the long term. Mark, I don't know if you'd like to add anything on that.
Just emphasizing one thing that Don said was giving the customer the ability to do it too, because one of the most common things that we hear is, the customers may have an API or EDI capabilities to get this data out of their system, but they don't have the IT resources to deal with another company to make that happen, right? And that's understandable, especially, the smaller companies, as you said, Erik, that have a million things happening at once, and they have their roadmaps and their prioritization. They don't necessarily want to just halt everything to go and deal with a new company, right? And we understand that. And so a big part of our emphasis is how can we make it as simple as possible for a non-IT professional to come in and do these integrations, to the point of where it's a drag and drop builder, essentially, of different building blocks that you can not only integrate with a vast majority of systems, including your own proprietary systems, but also apply logic without needing a developer, without needing to rely on any type of managed services outside of it, outside of the normal processes, and just make it approachable at the end of the day. And that is one, again, big value prop that we're very excited about at Coolfire, because it's inherently going to be an absolute crucial part of any onboarding implementation of new software, especially for the smaller companies. So yeah, we have all of that in the works. It is a major piece of our platform. And then, that's my team responsibility to make sure that is as simple as possible if you do need some hand holding. So yeah, we're excited about it. And I think that is a major benefactor for, especially the smaller companies.
That's really great to hear.
Yeah, it's a great point Marc made. A lot of times people think about integrations, it's big companies, and what we see is, again, you can debate it, but it's probably an even bigger problem with the small companies just because they don't have the resources and the skill set and everything else. And so, as Marc said, we want to make this, click a button and it's done, right? And again, we'll see if we're able to get it quite that far, but the point is we want to make this a value lever, a high value point for even the smallest of the small guys, because we do see a big gap in the market there.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say I've spent some time with Coolfire myself on the product, and or core anyway. And I find it incredibly intuitive, and it's interesting how every time I talk to Marc or Clark Wellman there on your team, I get every time I have a question, I get a response that leaves me going, oh yeah, of course you've thought of this, because it's intuitive. It just happened. That's great. Don't even need to worry about it.
Thank you. We appreciate that. I don't know if we've thought of everything, but we sure try. I'll tell you that.
We try.
Well, I'm excited to see what the next thing is, and what the next thing is that you guys do, and to work some more with it and talk to you guys some more. We have some other ideas as well on shows, and some things we want to dig into a little deeper for the audience. So with that, I'll extend my gratitude. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for joining Truck Focus Podcast. And yeah, you have yourselves fantastic days.
Yeah, you too. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you having us on, and thanks for your time.
Absolutely. Look forward to talking further. Thanks, Erik. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care, guys.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Well, friends, that's all for today's episode. A huge shout out to Erik. Thank you so much for being an incredible host. Don and Marc, thank you so much for sharing your journey, as well as some incredible insights on Coolfire. So if you're interested to learn more about Coolfire and Coolfire Core and how their software can have a positive impact in your organization, then I highly recommend that you connect with my friend Clark Wellman, who's a sales director of the Midwest region. So you can email him directly at cwellman, so CWELLMAN at coolfiresolutions.com, or by phone. So his phone number is 314-202-4078. And as always, you can reach out to me and I'll put you in contact with Clark directly. So again, thank you so much, Erik, Don, and Marc. I really appreciate your time today and just everything that was shared. It was just an incredible episode. So to all of our dedicated listeners, again, thank you so much. So without you, we would still be rocking the show. We would still be introducing you to industry leaders such as Marc and Don, as well as Coolfire as a product. But it's just a whole lot more exciting knowing that we have so much of industry support. And as I like to say, the greater the following, the greater the impact. So again, thank you so much. If this is your first time listening to the Truck Focus podcast, what a treat. Honestly, super glad that you're here. So I do ask that you subscribe. So if you're listening to this on any major podcast platform, simply hit the subscribe button. So that way you're notified of all upcoming episodes. Same thing, if you're watching this on YouTube, simply hit subscribe, hit the notification button. So that way you're notified of new upcoming episodes. We do release episodes weekly, and there's some really good stuff coming up. So again, if you have not done so yet, I also encourage you to sign up to our monthly newsletter. So Truck Focus newsletter is all about taking industry advice from some of the top leaders and injecting it into industry to help create a pivotal change. So you can simply do that by simply following the link below, simply click it, good to go. And again, thank you so much for all of your support. Hope you have a really wonderful day. And again, Erik, Don, and Marc, really appreciate you guys hopping on. Have a great day.